This presentation was created when EVMS was honored by the Economics Club of Hampton Roads with its 2013 Economic Impact Award. It has since been organized into 6 modules. In these modules, you'll learn how you and those you know benefit from having an academic health center in Hampton Roads, as well as a bit about what we see coming in the future. First, though, a little background on the birth of EVMS. Eastern Virginia Medical School holds an honored position in American history as one of the only schools of medicine founded by a grassroots effort of the local community. As a result, EVMS has deep roots and a strong sense of community service. The people of Hampton Roads benefit today because forward-thinking civic leaders turned their attention in the early 1960s to improving the quality of health care in the region, because they planted a seed. Here was the problem. In 1960, there was a shortage of doctors in the region. The ratio of physicians to population in Eastern Virginia was 86 practitioners to 100,000 residents. In contrast, around Richmond, the ratio was 183 doctors per 100,000 residents. In Charlottesville, the ratio was 281 per 100,000 people. That's 86 versus 183 versus 281. The solution seemed obvious. We needed a medical school. So, our community leaders approached the Commonwealth for permission to build one. It ended up being a good news, bad news situation. The enabling legislation created the Norfolk Area Medical Center Authority, but provided no money for the project. Instead, state officials argued the medical school should be a private endeavor. In 1964, the Norfolk City Council appointed 7 non-salaried commissioners to the medical authority, choosing regionally oriented people from other cities in addition to Norfolk. This was the beginning of a 5-year mission to build needed health services that would attract top-flight physician educators. The medical authority knew we needed additional treatment facilities in Hampton Roads. They created a physical and occupational therapy institute that included the region's first public resource for students with disabilities. 5 months later, they opened a center that allowed open-heart surgeries to be performed in Eastern Virginia for the first time. They also opened a research institute in the area's largest nonprofit hospital. We're talking about Norfolk General. By 1969, the medical authority believed there were enough healthcare facilities in the pipeline to provide an adequate clinical base. It was time to find the money for the medical school. 35 public service-minded citizens were named co-chairmen of the capital campaign and charged with raising $15 million. The campaign began in January 1970 with an estimated completion date of 6 months. It took 3 years. The campaign started well enough. The committee members made a persuasive argument for the economic impact a medical school would deliver: the attraction of highly paid professionals, increased jobs at the medical center, millions of dollars in construction revenues, and increased tax revenues. By mid-1970, they had raised $4 million locally, but efforts to bring in national sources of funding were meeting with disappointment. In October 1970, the Carnegie Commission on Higher Education issued a report identifying Eastern Virginia as the largest population center in the United States without a medical school. The report confirmed our need, but in January 1971, the first anniversary of the fund, the total raised hovered at just over $7 million in cash and pledges, and national funding sources were still saying no. April brought the fund to its local goal of $7.5 million, and the first meaningful national money came in. Dr. Robert Manning was appointed dean of the medical school, and a site visit from the accrediting committee was scheduled. However, trouble was brewing in the state capitol. As he planned his 1972 through 1974 biennial budget, Governor Linwood Holden requested a detailed report on the financial planning for construction and operation of the medical school. A delegation of medical authority commissioners, the campaign chairman, state legislators, and a United States congressman from the area planned to hand-deliver the document to the governor. But the meeting was abruptly canceled, and they were told to mail the report instead. That was not a good sign. At the second anniversary of the fund drive in January 1972, the total cash and pledges approached $9 million. The accrediting body for medical schools recognized EVMS for clearing the first hurdle in a 4-step process. The medical authority requested $4,000 per medical student per year, about $96,000 total in funding from the state annually, but the governor refused to include the subsidy in his budget. He objected to the concept of state support for a private school. This set up a skirmish at the Capitol. A delegation of Eastern Virginians appeared before the Appropriations Committee pointing out that many states contributed much more to private schools of medicine, that the requested subsidy was far less than those being provided to other medical schools in Virginia, and that the state would get a third medical school without a capital investment. They were convincing. The committee inserted the modest subsidy, and the governor kept it in. We were finally making progress. The spring of 1972 saw a surge of fundraising success, but late summer brought setbacks. By the time fall arrived, the capital campaign had been working 2.5 years, and they had raised more than $11 million, they had acquired buildings, faculty had been recruited, and more than 1,000 students had applied for admission. However, the medical school champions were having some sobering second thoughts. January 1973 was just around the corner. The accrediting body was scheduled to return, and the campaign was still more than $3 million short. The big break came in October 1972. Henry Clay Hoffheimer was walking his dogs on the beach when he saw a couple who had donated substantial money to start a law school. So, he struck up a conversation and eventually convinced Francis and Sidney Lewis of Richmond to put up a challenge gift of $1.5 million on the condition that it be matched by new dollars raised. The capital campaign had just 67 days to make calls and attempt to secure more money from an area that had already committed so much. For perspective, in today's dollars, we're talking about raising $8 million in just over 2 months. It was the 11th hour. Newspapers donated full-page ads. Radio and TV stations responded with public service announcements. And it worked. By December 28th, $15.7 million had been raised in cash and pledges. On December 31st, a $1 million gift from a national foundation was announced, and by January 3rd, 1973, the capital campaign total reached $17.6 million. It succeeded because people from all across the community pitched in. One of our faculty members recalls as a child hearing a presentation in church about the need for a medical school, about how important it would be to the region. So he carried his piggy bank full of pennies to church to contribute to the cause. He made the decision that EVMS was worth the investment. And decades later, Clint Cruz oversees one of our educational programs. EVMS exists because a group of committed citizens would not be denied. A small group worked to nurture a seed that would grow into something remarkable. Community leaders such as Mason Andrews and Harry Mansbach, who served as chairman of the Medical Authority. Congressman Porter Hardy, who served as chairman of the EVMS Capital Campaign. Henry Clay Hoffheimer, who served as president of the EVMS Foundation. Toy Savage, who served as a Medical Authority commissioner and drafted the enabling legislation. There are far too many people to mention everyone who had a hand in planting this seed, but their remarkable commitment has been invaluable to the community.